Hello my friends, and welcome to The Sweater with Kathleen Dames. Today we are going to do a little filament number 2 trunk show, and I'm going to talk sweater therapy, knitting therapy. Just some general thoughts that have come up recently as I've been doing trunk shows in person about knitting. So I think I'll start with a little therapy and then we will get to the knitting. And the thing that's come up recently when I've gone out in the world and talked to knitters is a lot of them say, oh, wow, everything is so fine gauge, or everything looks really hard, and I don't think that I'm that good of a knitter. And you may have only just learned the knit stitch, you may still be wrestling with the purl stitch, whatever it is, but I hate hearing people talking down their abilities. If you see a pattern and you love it and you want to make it, you will be motivated to make it. Now, it may not be perfect. And of course, we know that as knitters, the more you knit, the more you get that muscle memory happening, and the more even your stitches can become and all that good stuff. But I think the number one way to get better is to knit. And the best way to want to knit is to choose things that you love and that you know you're going to be excited to have, whatever it is, whether it's a garter stitch scarf or a complicated sweater. But I keep hearing people saying like, oh, I don't think I could ever do that. Oh, I'm not, I only know how to do blah. I don't think I can do blah. And sometimes these people are saying, I only know how to knit socks. I can never knit a sweater. Well, if you've ever knit a sock, it's kind of complicated. I mean, it's not hard once you get into it and you have a good pattern and you follow the instructions and you get the concept, especially of like turning the heel. But it's not that much more complicated than knitting a sweater. If you are following a well-written pattern, you should be able to, and if you know how to knit, you should be able to make that thing. I think what isn't often being said is that people get really hung up on, we all get hung up on our own body image, choosing sizes, worrying about being judged on what size you're knitting, things like that. And I found myself saying multiple times this past weekend at a couple of trunk shows, there are no size labels in a sweater. The thing is, and I've said it in previous episodes of seasons of the podcast, like, be honest. Choose your measurements, choose a sweater that's going to flatter you in the places that you want to be flattered and sort of smooth over the places you don't really like to think about too much. And then you'll get a sweater that makes you happy. And if it fits you well, nobody's going to be wondering what size you made. They're going to be looking at your gorgeous sweater. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that and about how I feel that people tend to get really stuck instead of just plowing through and being proud of what you made. The great thing about knitting too is that if you make it and you don't like it, as long as you haven't felted it, you can take it apart and make something new. And that goes back, reminds me of during World War II, the make, do, and mend movement in England. And that was where mothers, it was mostly women, would unravel the sweaters they had knit and reknit them to fit their growing children, or to fix fraying cuffs, or whatever the problem was with the current hand knit. The idea that you can remake it, that it isn't final, is pretty great. And of course, you don't really want to rip out all of your hard work. I understand that, but at the same time, wouldn't you rather end up with something that you love? I tend to look at when I have to rip something out, and I don't like to either. Let's be honest. It's all that hard work. But I have learned so much in what I have made. My knitting has gotten better. That muscle memory has kicked in more. I'm practicing all those techniques that I like. But, wow, that's really loud. All right. Oh, shoot. Now I forgot my train of thought. Making the thing again, but if I love the yarn, I get the yarn back, and ultimately I will make something that I will be really happy to have. You want to be proud of your work and you want to show it off, and that's another thing that came up a lot, is people worrying about errors and talking about stuff like that. And I taught a lot of people this weekend about the galloping horse test, which is one of my favorites. If you wouldn't notice the error in your knit as you're galloping by on a horse, leave it in there and move on with your life and finish your sweater or whatever you're knitting. But I also have to say the corollary to that is, if every time someone says, oh my goodness, what a pretty sweater, you say, oh, well, see, I made this mistake here and it's just not right. Good Lord, then go back. Fix the error, rip it out, do whatever you need to do. Because you should be saying thank you. I want you to work on that. I want you to practice. When somebody says, what a beautiful knitted thing, you say, thank you. Thank you, I got the yarn from blah, blah, blah. Thank you, it's so-and-so's indie published pattern. Thank you, I love it too. We spend so much time apologizing for things, deflecting, all those things, and we need to stop doing that. Because you are a talented person, you have made something beautiful, you should be proud of it, you should be happy to wear it, and you should appreciate getting compliments from other people. It's just, oh, come on, everybody. You deserve it. You worked hard. You deserve that compliment. So that's a little bit of knitting therapy. Go back and replay it if you're still getting stuck, if you always point out your errors to other people, if you put your hand knits away and never wear them, or you think they're not good enough, or you donate them to a charity because you can't wear it yourself. Donate to a charity because you want somebody else to have your handiwork. Donate to a charity out of love, but don't try and get rid of something. Make it again, make it better. Or, I just feel like you should give things to charity that are worth having, because the people who need charity are people too. And you should work on your craft until you are creating the things that you really love and are really proud of. And then I want to go back to that idea that you find something that you love, a sweater pattern that you love, whatever it is, a shawl, whatever it might be, and you say, oh, I don't know how to do that yet. Well, the only way to learn how to do something, to get better at something, is to practice. And I tell my kids this all the time. The only way you're going to get better at your multiplication tables or playing the guitar or knitting is to practice and to do it more. And to try new things. That's how you expand your skills. You don't do the same thing over and over again and then suddenly you're ready to knit a cabled sweater. You start knitting cables. You might even knit cables that you don't really know how to knit. The first cabled sweater I knit was a baby sweater out of cotton. Cotton. Not a good first choice for cables. It's not elastic, so shifting those stitches, crossing them one over the other, three over the other, is harder to do. But I did it. I kind of didn't know any better. And I think that that's a good thing to practice. Just go for it. What's the worst that's going to happen? I'll tell you, on the first cabled baby sweater I knit out of cotton, I really didn't fully understand what I was doing when I was cabling. I was doing it out of a book and it was written instructions, and so I kept crossing the cables the same direction, even though it was like an XO cable, so you went in and out, or you crossed them over. Anyway, I left that error in there because soon, after the first repeat, I realized what I had done wrong on that cable, and I fixed it. Going forward, I actually didn't go back and fix it, and I left it in there for a number of reasons. One, I was too scared to go back, and I really didn't know how to correct problems yet, and that's fine. But two, it sort of was that humbling thing that a lot of cultures actually do on purpose. Native American beading or quill work, there is almost always an error introduced because they're not perfect. The Amish do the same thing. A lot of different cultures believe that the only thing perfect is God, if that's what you believe in. But that we as humans have flaws and make errors, and we do. We make mistakes. And so as much as I often love to do things perfectly, there is something to be said for the imperfect, like wabi-sabi in Japanese culture, where the celebration of the imperfect and the broken and the not symmetrical is celebrated. So just keep all those things in mind and practice and go for it. You see a pattern that you love and you're like, I've never done cables, or I've never done noops or whatever. Just go for it. I mean, it's just knitting. It's the knit and the purl stitch. It's a very binary thing. And pretty much all of the moves in knitting are like mistakes that you made early on. A yarn over? Well, when you first started knitting, you might have accidentally wrapped the yarn around the needle. But now, as an more experienced knitter, you know that when you do that on purpose, you get a nice hole. You do need to do a compensatory decrease after that or before that to keep the number of stitches the same, assuming that's what you want to do. But you know, that was a mistake, and now it's a technique for you as you move forward in your knitting. And I'm going to say it one more time, the only way to get better is to practice and to do things that expand your skills. So that's my knitting therapy this week. I just felt like it was something that we need to talk about more. So feel free to join in the conversation if you're watching this on YouTube, down in the comments, over in my Ravelry group, or just send me an email. You should be a newsletter subscriber to the sweater newsletter. Hit reply if you have something to say to me about all this. I'd love to hear it. And if you need more therapy, if you have questions of a therapeutic nature, feel free to ask those anytime. Okay, so now on with the show. So we have Filament number 2. This is the spring issue, 32 gorgeous full color pages with beautiful photography from Anne, layout by me, illustrations by our lovely friend Laurel. And these are all the wonderful patterns that we have. We did 8 patterns this season, and we've got you covered sort of from neck to toe. And we chose a sort of pink roses palette. We felt that was really springy, but we've got bits of other shades too. And of course, you can always knit whatever patterns you like in whatever colors you like. So we'll start at the top, going alphabetical. This is Constance. Jane is wearing Constance. It is a beautiful bottom-up circular yoke cardigan, and it was knit out of kid silk mohair. I think this is the ballet pink colorway, and Anne added these great eyelet rows at the cuffs, as you can see here, the cuffs and in the yoke, and then she threaded ribbon through it. So it's actually pretty straightforward knit, stockinette, garter stitch, but it's got those special details. And of course, Anne added some beautiful vintage pink buttons, and a lot of them. We kind of love those, like lots of buttons cardigans. So there are a few shaping rounds in the yoke that gather everything together at the neck, but really it's not a difficult knit. You could also consider knitting it in like a fingering weight yarn, sock yarn. It won't be as airy as the mohair, but it's certainly, the mohair is knitted at an open gauge, so bear that in mind. If you don't really get along with Kid Silk Haze or one of the other mohair blends, you can consider another yarn. This is a great opportunity for yarn substitution. Let's see, alphabetically next we have the Floralia cowl, which is a nice in the round cowl, and there's a matching pair of fingerless gloves. And there are 2 lace patterns, slightly more complicated diamond type lace down here in the cuffs and at the top and bottom of the cowl, and then a more straightforward eyelet pattern for the hands and the center of the cowl. Each of these, the mitts and the cowl, were each knit with 1 skein of Harrisville's wool silk, which comes in some great soft but not sickly sweet pastel colors, and it has this lovely rustic hand to it. So lots of fun, this set, and one of the more straightforward patterns. The stitch patterns are charted, so just bear that in mind. So after Floralia, we have the Fortuny wrap. It is a lovely rectangular stole, and it's got 2 stitch patterns, this candle flame and then this lovely ribbon pattern here with lots of increases and decreases that make it sort of wave. And I was inspired by the Delphos gowns created by Mariano Fortuny in the 20s. beautiful hand-dyed silk gowns that were pleated, inspired by ancient Greek sort of goddess gowns, and they were tied with complementary silk belts that were hand printed with these sort of similar to the candle flame motifs. And so when I saw the candle flame motif, I realized I could adapt the stitch pattern and it would be perfect. But what I didn't realize until I was knitting this sample is the perfection of the candle flame and the ribbon rib are the same number of rows. So they all work together really well. It's really easy to remember once you've gone through it once. And then the other nice thing about this is it uses a picot cast on and a picot bind off, and they match, and they've got this little extra bit of frill, which I like. If you've never done a picot cast on, I tell you how to do it in the pattern. Same with the bind off. If you're not comfortable doing the cast on, you could always do a provisional cast on and go back later and bind it off that way. This was knit in Woolen Rabbit's opal sock yarn, 2 skeins of it, and it makes just the loveliest, squishiest wrap. It is a cashmere blend, and I really just, this is the kind of shawl that you can wear draping and elegant, or you can just cuddle up into it, wrap it around your neck a few times, like Jane is doing. So after Fortuny, we have Gather Ye Rosebuds, which is a lovely pair of socks that Anne designed with a really pretty lace pattern here on the foot that goes up the arm, goes up the leg, and a simple 2x2 ribbing in the cuff. There's a secondary lace pattern here. It is a toe-up sock, and this was knit in Dream in Colors smooshy yarn, and a really pretty rosy color. So if you are a sock knitter, these are really pretty. The stitch pattern is just, let's see if I can, just gorgeous. Okay. Next we have, I'm going in alphabetical order. Next we have Loosh, which I knit out of Dye for Yarn's paper silk. It's a silk tape, like a ribbon yarn, fine ribbon yarn. It's so silky, drape and sheen, knit at a slightly open gauge. I just love this, and as you can see, it's a crossover cardigan, and I placed the buttons at the sides, and then the buttonholes are in the points. So you can also wear it as sort of a fly front cardigan, which I love, and you don't have those buttons bonking you. So there, there you go. This is a really straightforward knit. It's worked bottom up. You do the body in one piece and you do the sleeves. You start with a little bit of ribbing and then you increase right away to the upper arm. So no increases, nothing to worry about. You just knit a tube up to here, join everything together, and we do a seamless set-in sleeve. It really is a lovely detail on this that makes the fit really nice. Like I said, it's really simple. There isn't even any ribbing or anything along the edges or the back of the collar. It's all about the drape of the silk, or whatever yarn you choose. At the yarn stores this weekend, we were looking at linen and linen blend yarns that would be great for this. And this would even work gauge-wise in a fingering weight yarn. So if you're looking for an all-season sweater, this would be a great one. Whether you wear it open or closed. I'm closing it up now. And be sure to get yourself some special buttons to have at the sides of your sweater. So that's Loosh. I'm not supposed to have favorites, just like children, but right now, as spring is finally arriving in New York City, this one is my favorite. Okay, so Jane and I decided it was time for a costume change. I'm back with Naiad, which is a half pie shawl, which means it's a semicircle. It's a full half circle, so it's not a crescent. It is the real deal. Worked from the bottom up. This was knit in Swan's Island beautiful merino silk lace blend, and it's got that lovely sheen. Swan's Island does botanical dyes, so this is indigo dyed, and it really is just kind of a showstopper. And it's not as hard as you think, I promise. The only downside to this, and I can't really even apologize for it because it's just the way it has to be, is that you have to cast on down here at the bottom. And that's almost 600 stitches that you have to cast on. Oh, but otherwise you couldn't get this gorgeous shape here with the points. The good news is that you decrease as you work your way up, and so at the end you only have like 5 stitches left. So it's one of those vanishing acts, as opposed to the sweaters that start at the top, shawls that start at the top and work their way out, and suddenly you have to bind off 600 stitches. So I guess it's up to you. Do you want to cast on that many stitches or bind off? I do talk about a special cast on that I recommend to make the edge loose enough for the blocking of these points. And then I used what are called Irish knots, which are worked a little differently than a noop or a bobble. I tried all 3. This is the one that worked for me, and I do describe it in the chart for the lace. It's used in the edging and then in this sort of waving stitch in the rest of the other panels. Feel free to try bobbles and noops yourself and see which one you like in your yarn. Also consider substituting beads. This would be a lovely pattern to work with beads, and I do believe that I mentioned, I think I even gave you some bead quantities if you are looking to knit with beads. So that's Naiad. I love that one. It really is a special one though. You really do. I think if Fortuny is the kind of shawl that you could just wrap around your neck a few times and bundle up and be cozy. But Naiad is the kind of thing you plan your outfit around. And you want to wear it so that it really is showing off all that beautiful work. Okay, so that's Naiad. Next up, we have Rosarium. This is by Anne. It's worked top down with a raglan yoke, and lovely color work up here at the top of the yoke and then down on the waist. And I had a number of knitters talk to me about how they appreciated that the color work was not on the bust, because they found it was hard to get the color work to finish in the right spot so that it didn't make you look weird. Nobody wants to look weird. So color work down here, you can adjust where you start it. Remember, it's worked top down. Beautiful sort of rosemalling-esque color work pattern here, the main pattern. The smaller pattern is sort of little triangles or arches. And then Anne also included a neat little 2-color bit in the garter stitch edges, which are at the collar, cuff, and hem, and it sort of makes it look like the contrasting color is woven through the garter stitch. It's sort of really lovely and kind of ties back to Constance with the woven ribbon. So that is Rosarium. It's worked in 3 colors of Ralma Finalgarn. Any fingering weight yarn, preferably kind of sticky, a good woolly, lightweight yarn would make a lovely version of this pattern. And finally, I am wearing Whistler Pink, which is a bottom-up tee with waist shaping all around, bust shaping where it counts, little short sleeves. You could make them longer if you like. I liked them this length. Usually I don't wear them with a t-shirt underneath, but it works. And then it's a circular yoke, so there are a few rounds of decreases working your way up, and everything is finished off with 2x2 ribbing. This is in the lovely Joe Sharp Silk Georgette yarn. Joe Sharp is not dead. You can still find their yarns. I found mine at Halcyon in Maine, but you can definitely search on their website for their stockists. Any other, this is I believe a sport weight yarn. You could even do it in fingering weight. It would be a slightly more open gauge. You'd probably want to wear a camisole underneath, but it's a very flattering, pretty little sweater. And I added these 3D flowers as a fun little homage to my inspiration, which was James McNeill Whistler's Symphony in Flesh and Pink, which is a beautiful painting. And the woman in the painting is wearing this sort of cape thing with appliqued flowers on it, and that's what made me think of these little 3D flowers. They are removable as it is in the pattern. They're worked from the center out, and if you don't close up the center, it functions as a buttonhole. So I've sewed on special buttons, and then I can remove the flowers as I wish. I have 5 on the front, and then I have 1 on the back. You could do more flowers, you could do just 1 or 2. I leave that up to you, knitter's choice. So that is the collection. That is Filament number 2, our Roses collection. It's available now on Ravelry. And the ebook is available on Ravelry. If you want a print copy, be sure to go to our website, knitfilament.com, and you can order it there, and we will mail you a copy with a pretty little postcard and probably a button too. If you have any questions on anything, always feel free to leave a comment if you are watching this on YouTube, or if you're a newsletter subscriber, you should be getting somewhat regular messages from me. Always you can hit reply and we can have a conversation that way, or come to the Ravelry forums. Filament has its own Ravelry group, and of course you know mine, Kathleen Dames Design. So all those things you can find in all the usual places. If you're stuck, just hit reply on an email and get in touch with me. So I hope you feel better for some knit therapy, and I hope you're inspired by our springtime collection. We're hard at work on summer right now, and that will be keeping us both quite busy. If there's anything else you'd like me to talk about in terms of knitting therapy, sweater therapy in particular, I am happy to do so. Otherwise, we'll be back in a few weeks with more to share going forward. So thank you so much for being here, and happy knitting. Mwah! Bye!